We're getting started. It's, of course, Art Viewing Adventures. Thought I would just
Okay.
mention a couple things as we get going. One of which is that it's open studios in San Francisco right now.
Right.
Rob, are you planning to do any open studios related?
Yeah. In fact, yesterday we went to Hunters Point and spent the whole day there. There's lots to see. Uh, that was only this last weekend, but uh, I really recommend open studios. They're very fun and very interesting. Each weekend it's a different area of town. This coming weekend is Mission Castro. After that, I'm not sure. You'd have to check the website, but it goes on for 4 weeks, and so that's very interesting. The other art thing of note, which is going on, is the at the De Young is what they call the De Young Open, where many artists have applied to be in this show. They did it a couple of years ago during the pandemic, and this is the second time they're doing it. And there, I forget how many artists. It's something like 600, 400, 600, some huge number. The show was hung, floor to ceiling in a salon style. I haven't seen
You've
it
already
yet,
seen it.
but
Is that right?
many local artists are in it. And I have not. Have you? I haven't seen
No,
it
I
yet.
haven't yet. I'm hoping to. I really enjoyed the one they did 2 years ago. A mutual friend
Yeah,
of ours was in that,
yeah.
Gerard
So,
Boulong, who
so those are the
I'll be going to his open studio. But I don't think Gerard is
right.
in this, or maybe Gerard is in this one. I'm forgetting.
Yeah,
So we've got that going
yeah. I
on.
don't know. I thought he was, but I don't know.
Oh, can you hear me, Rob?
Whatever.
I can hear you, Rodney. Really
Rob, are
like your
you
hat.
hearing
Yes,
me?
but you're kind of breaking. You're kind of breaking up, though.
Okay.
I do hear you, Rodney, but you're kind of breaking up. Are you?
Okay. Well, we'll just be mindful that we are being a little challenged by the internet gods today. We're going to get started in just about a minute. Other thing to mention, of course, SF MoMA has some exciting stuff going on. They've got the Yayoi Kusama exhibition,
You
which
sure
we actually
are.
talked about last time. It's to me a little underwhelming that they only really have three of her artworks as part of that. But it's definitely, if you're a member, you should definitely go. And if you like her work, she's got two of her infinity rooms and then a pretty magnificent sculpture there. So we are just about at 1 o'clock. And Nikki, I think you can go ahead and get us going. Tell us about the community living campaign that's hosting us.
Okay. All right. I don't know if you can see me that well or not. I don't know where I can't switch to myself on this phone. But
We
anyway,
see you.
okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. We're the Community Living Campaign, and we're a nonprofit in San Francisco. We've been around, I don't know, getting close to 20 years. And we support and advocate for seniors and disabled people in San Francisco. And one of the ways we do that is by bringing you art programs such as this one. That's one of our popular, by doing a lot of tech support for seniors and disabled people. So I'll put our a link to us in the chat because it looks like my desktop computer is actually coming back on. So welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here today. Our wonderful art critique to be shared by everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, and so this is Art Viewing Adventures. I'm Rodney Paul, but I'm joined by Rob Tat, who is a fellow museum guide, and he's coming back. I'm not even keeping track of how many times you've presented here on the program, Rob, but it's always a great favorite of mine to have you. You have this lifelong love of photography that you share with us. And I know you've created a pretty cool set of photographs for us to talk about today. So welcome to Art Viewing Adventures, Rob. Oh, you are muted. Unmute yourself.
All right, there we go. Let me share the screen and see if we can get this going.
Very good. We're hearing you now.
Go.
We're seeing your
Okay,
slides.
and are you seeing slides?
We
good?
are.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good. So welcome everybody. You're always a wonderful group to deal with. And, in the past when we've done these presentations, all of you have just had so many wonderful things to contribute to say about the works that we've shown. So this time I've designed my lecture to be somewhat shorter, so as to allow time for all the comments. So for each photograph, I'm going to show photographer, maybe some anecdotes, and then I'm going to open it up to you for your reactions. So let's get started. This first piece, I'm sure some of you recognize. It's by André Kertész, and it's called Chez Mondrian. It's a wonderful, wonderful photograph. André Kertész was a Hungarian photographer, and he lived in Paris for many years. And he was a street photographer, so he had the sense of the capturing the so-called decisive moment, the moment that you see on the street, and just capturing that perfectly. But he also had a wonderful sense of the formal aesthetic, and particularly of the modernist aesthetic. We'll talk more about modernism a little bit later on. But this picture he made when he was visiting the studio, the home studio of Mondrian, the famous painter in Paris. And as he was leaving, he saw these wooden flowers in the vase, and this hat, straw hat hanging, and this circular staircase with the wonderful lines, and thought it would make a good picture, and indeed it has. It's one of his most famous images, and a very popular picture. So I want to open it up for your comments. One thing that we talk about is this idea of the decisive moment versus what was sometimes called the unexpected moment, the capturing of something beautiful or special like this. So the decisive moment, the documentary versus the unexpected moment. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think our minds always try to we try to make sense of the images we see, right, Rob? And
Sure,
so I almost look at this flower pot and then the hat hanging behind it. And the flower pot almost suggests a human being. It seems like maybe it could be a person with a head with a very long neck, and then the hat is their hat. And could it be a stand-in for Mondrian himself? Also, the shadow is kind of wonderful. So that's kind of where my mind goes with it.
That's an interesting comment. Yeah,
I'd love to hear other folks in chat, or you can unmute if you want, but we would love to hear your thoughts. Why do you find this an interesting photograph? I see Sarah says it does seem like he caught the shadow perfectly. And Gail says the staircase bends up towards the left and the flowers point towards the right, which creates an X shape for the eye that makes me want to look closer at the photo.
Very good. Very, very incisive. Good.
Paco says, I really like the detail of the flower vase.
I see a lot of curves, which to me was harmonious. The curve of the vase, the curve of the stair railing, the curve of the stairs.
So lots of curves you're seeing.
Anybody find this? Yeah, anybody find this a place you just would love to go visit? That's my reaction to it. It just looks like it would be such an interesting place to go and look and be, going up those little narrow stairs, and who knows what else might be upstairs if he's got wooden flowers in the hallway. It's Mondrian.
Well, it's so interesting that it's the home of Mondrian, the great modernist painter known for his stripes and his primary colors. Karen is noting that the flowers, we see flowers that aren't green. So it's kind of like this monochrome view of Mondrian, even though he was kind of someone known for color.
Yeah. Well, Any other comments, or else we'll move on? Got lots to see. All right, well, let's move on to the next piece. And we're
One
going to
more
talk about
comment.
Walker Evans.
There's so much black and white shading, which makes this black and white photo burst into color, says Gail. And then Karen is noting that Mondrian didn't like green. That was not a Mondrian color. That's a good point.
All right.
But yeah, those are other thoughts. Why don't we move on, Rob?
Yeah, let's move on. Are you still hearing me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're going to move on to Walker Evans, who's a wonderful photographer. He did a wide variety of work over the years, but he's particularly known for the work that he did during the Great Depression, the 1930s in America, and the work that he did then, well, basically most of his work was documentary work, and interesting that by that time, by the 30s, photography had been really more of an expression of the aesthetic at that point, aesthetic scenes, beautiful scenes, and so on, and documentary photography started to come back into its own. It's the idea of presenting a subject just as it is, without any interpretation, and trying to be as objective as possible, which is the idea of the documentary photography, and based on the idea that quote unquote the camera doesn't lie. And of course, today we could talk about lots of ways that the camera does lie, but that's another discussion, and maybe we'll have that one day. But in any event, it's interesting to note that documentary photography, documenting, was one of the first uses of photography in the very early days of what was called the Grand Tour. And these were photographs of parts of the world, the pyramids in Egypt, or the Alps, or whatever. People couldn't travel. It was very expensive to travel. So people love doing this armchair traveling, armchair tourism, seeing all the parts of the world in photographs. And you can imagine how exciting that was for folks who had never seen anything like that before, maybe just drawings. So now, photography kind of evolves back to that, but in a different kind of a use, and again, kind of evolving from art back into the reality mode. But these two documentary photographs of his are they do have a sense of abstraction about them, none about. Very powerful portrait. The tenant farmer's wife in Alabama, 1936. Poor tenant family living in a hovel, a hut, tenement, I should say tenement. No, I'm sorry, it's called tenant farmers. Yeah, they were tenant farmers, meaning that they lived, I guess, on someone else's land and worked the land. Anyway, so let's talk about this. When you see this picture, what does it say to you?
Well, the woman is looking right at us. She doesn't have a smile. She doesn't really have, she has kind of a blank expression, and she looks like she's kind of plainly dressed. So, we're just seeing a person like living this life, in getting a glimpse of somebody who, is kind of maybe struggling with the difficulties of the Depression. We have a comment from Gail that she looks proud. She sees a certain amount of pride in this image. And Parker says she looks stunning.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's like this direct gaze she has at us kind of draws us into her world. Marcia Klein is noting this reminds her of Dorothea Lange.
Yeah, photographers, Lange and Walker Evans, or any great portrait photographer, this idea, this ability to capture the essence of the person in the portrait is what makes for a powerful portrait, and you certainly see it here.
But do you believe that she was proud, or this is just the image that the photographer chose, which then leads us to think proud. Do you understand?
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't know. We don't know how many other photographs he might have taken and chosen this one. Again, it kind of debunks this whole idea that the camera doesn't lie, right? Because if you're trying to photograph something as a document where you're not adding any interpretation to it, you know, a pure document, then, you know, will the photograph actually do it or not? Or, you know, as soon as you make a choice, as soon as you crop, as soon as you do any kind of manipulation to it, you already are making comment.
And just choosing a photograph among many, right? Nikki says she looks
Any other
young
thoughts?
but
Before we move
aged.
on? Yes.
So, and then Gail says, makes me wonder where her kids, grandkids, and great grandkids are now. Did they rise above poverty?
Mhm.
My mom was her daughter. She would have been 5 at the time of this photo, but my mom was born into much better circumstances.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we don't know, of course, but one hopes. But if you see this, if you've seen this photograph in the context of other photographs that Walker Evans made in the same spot that day, you get a sense of what their life was like, and, you know, how they were living in this, essentially the shack, and under very poor conditions. One hopes that, yes, the ensuing generations did better. Certainly the migrant mother, the famous Dorothea Lange photograph, the descendants, you know, were very, very successful in life, and that was good to see. Okay, well, let's move on.
Comment, one comment from Sherry. She
One
looks
more comment?
undernourished. Sherry says she looks undernourished, sunken face and bones around neck.
Good catch.
But yeah, let's move on, Rob.
Yeah, all right, good. Well, we're going to talk about Edmund Muybridge. We're going to go back quite a bit in time here.
Muybridge created this technique of setting up a series of cameras along the horse track with wires across the track, and as the horse galloped along, he would hit the wires and set off the shutters, and make a series of photographs. And you can see from this that indeed in number 2 and 3, all the 4 hooks are off the ground. So I guess Stanford must have won his bet. Well, having developed this technology, Muybridge wanted to continue to use it, and so he started doing a series of motion studies. They were called animal locomotion, but they were of animals as well as human beings. And here you can see the same kind of technique. It's the same motion, the same movement, be photographed from 3 different angles. And this is essentially, you could consider it really an early motion picture, because it's really what a motion picture is, where you see 24 frames a second of the motion, and when we look at it all together, it appears to be a smooth motion. So you find this interesting, not interesting? You know, do you think it's weird that the woman is nude? What's the reactions?
Well, we know in the art world, you know, any excuse you have to get people to take their clothes off, can't really.
That's right.
But you know, I think
it's old photographs.
I think it's important to think about it in the context of its time. And it kind of reminds me of, like, we all live in a world now where we have cameras with us everywhere we go. And I think over time we've learned how to take advantage of that. You know, we've learned things that you can do with the camera that you never did before. Like maybe you make a photograph of your shopping list, right? Or maybe you use your camera in new ways. And so I look at this and I think, well, this is someone who realized, oh, this new device can do this really amazing thing. We can understand how people and animals move. And so I think that's kind of part of what we're seeing there. Gail is noting, I hope she didn't pull a muscle. She says, don't try this at home.
Don't try this at home.
If you want to, I'd say pull down the shades before you do this. Your neighbors will find this quite curious if they look in. Sherry says she is quite an athlete, climbing up with only one step and jumping off.
Yeah.
And was this 3 simultaneous cameras or 3 different takes?
No. These are 3 simultaneous cameras. Again, the same technique of he somehow developed the way that he could make multiple shutters, multiple exposures, but they're at the same moment. So each line, top to bottom, would be the same moment, right, in the motion of the woman jumping.
Well,
it's the same. Yeah, from 3 angles. Three angles simultaneously. Yeah.
Take a look at the middle one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 from the left. Doesn't it look? Her hand is in a different place than the 5th one from the left.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know how. I guess it's hard to know exactly how much time between them. They're very close, but we don't know exactly how many seconds there were between, the exposures, each line.
Okay.
But if there are books, there are many, many, many of these. If you look them up, there's books full of them, and they're really quite interesting. And some of the animal ones are quite interesting too. Well, we should move on. We have lots to cover, and we're kind of running short already on time here. So let me move ahead. The next, excuse me. The next piece I want to show you has to do with William Henry Fox Talbot, and he was one of the 2 inventors of photographs, of the photographic medium. Interestingly, there were 2 inventors of photography, different technologies, and both happened in the same year, 1839. Fox Talbot was British. The other inventor was Louis Daguerre, who was French, and he invented the daguerreotype, which was the cased image, the image that you then put in a case. We've shown those on previous programs, and it was what was called a direct to plate process, meaning that the image is made right on the plate and it's then put into the case, and so there's no negative involved. So therefore, it cannot be replicated. Fox Talbot invented a negative positive process where he would work with a negative and then be able to print multiple copies of it. It's called a calotype, and here you see the waxed paper negative on the left side, and there was no film at that point, no transparency, so the negatives actually were paper with waxed over, and the image was made there, and then it could be printed onto the positive, onto the photographic paper, which was then a salt print. Later on, we had gelatin silver prints, which are common, but at this point, the emulsion was actually salt. Now, I must tell you that for a long time, I would look at these early photographs and I just didn't get it. I thought, what's so exciting about these? I mean, it's a picture of a tree, big deal, or a picture of a bunch of pottery. I just didn't get why people were so enamored of them. And I'll tell you the story. I was in a group at one time called Photo Forum, which was an auxiliary at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. It was for people interested in photography. And we would have meetings, monthly meetings, and one meeting was held at a private home out in Marin. And the guest that night was Hans Kraus, a man named Hans Kraus, who was a dealer in early photographs from New York City. And he came and he talked about early photographs, and then he said, now, can we turn down the lights? Because I don't want to hurt what I'm about to show you. And he opened his case and he laid out on the table in front of us a series of these early photographs. And he said, these are some of the earliest photographs ever made. Well, just being in the presence of those unique original pieces, so just got to me. And from then on, I was hooked. Just the excitement of that. It's hard to relay. So let me see if I could get you hooked. We're going to talk about this photograph, and you might I didn't mention before. You might have noticed here though that the Pencil of Nature was the first book of photographs ever published. He published the early photographs that he made, Fox Talbot, and it was called The Pencil of Nature. So as we discuss this one, I'm interested in your comments, but also, why do you think the book of early photographs was called The Pencil of Nature?
Well, in the past, this would have been sketched with a pencil. And the goal was for a person to recreate what they saw as closely as possible. And they discovered this technique in which you didn't need to use a human hand to do that. And so I think, like in their mind, it's sort of like the outside world, the world of nature, is doing the sketch, and it's got to be just this is something human beings had been doing since the cave artists, and here it is now. We have this new technology that allows us to capture things, in an incredible fidelity. So
well put, Rodney.
It's always important to there's things that we're just used to seeing or hearing. I always think okay, I've heard Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band many, many times, but what would it have been like to be like the first person to hear the recording of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? And if you ask, do you think this is going to be a song that people are going to be listening to for decades, maybe even centuries to come? You wouldn't have known. You would just have to say, well, I think it's kind of cool or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other comments on the chat?
Yeah, let's hear it. You guys have been great on chat so far today. What are your thoughts on this? I know Gail says she just finds your explanation of the technical developments fascinating. And this is, one of the things we get with you, Rob, is you just have this great passion for photography, but you're also a great explainer of photography. But come on, folks, or unmute. We've had some great comments.
Okay.
Also.
Okay.
Is anybody?
And
what do you think?
Got lots to cover. So
I'm curious about the broom. In other words, it was positioned in this odd manner, and it must be telling us something. But I wasn't sure what.
Well, I was looking at that too, and interesting that what I take it is that you begin to see the aesthetics of photography emerging. That you set the broom at the same angle as the shadow, as if to say, I want to make this something cohesive, something beautiful. So it is, it begins to be art, even though it's really documented. It's really so early, but it begins to have an artistic eye behind it.
Well, and since it is October, I can't help noting it looks like the sort of broom that you might be able to fly around on.
Yeah.
It actually looks like it's glued to the wall. It doesn't actually look like it could stand. It's almost as though it was applied later.
That's the magic.
Maybe, or maybe it's just, maybe it's a little ledge there. It's hard to tell. Yeah, but it's good point, good observation.
Karen says in these photographs that light is the artist. That's really light is making these images.
Good point. So the light of nature is therefore the pencil of nature. The light is drawing it. Yes. A very intriguing title. I've always loved that title, Pencil of Nature. Anything else, Rodney, or are we going to move on here?
Yeah, well, we should probably move on. I don't know if you
Yeah,
were like a
okay.
door-to-door salesman, if this would would this be a place where you'd likely to make a sale? Like they need a vacuum cleaner, so maybe you would, right?
It's a full of brush man with fellow drums, right? Remember? Okay.
Very cute.
Well, let's jump way ahead from the beginnings of photography to the 1920s, 1930s, and a wonderful movement called the New Vision. And prior to that, photography in the late 19th, early 20th century was pictorialism, which we've seen examples of that in previous presentations. Soft focus, sort of emotional, a painterly style, very sentimental. And photographers at this point kind of took a step back and said, well, wait a minute. We now have cameras that are capable of sharp focus and depth of field. And why are we making blurry pictures? And so the New Vision came about. And the idea of it was that it would take advantage of the technology of photography. And these were the characteristics, simply put, of the New Vision: sharp focus, as opposed to soft focus. Using the small portable camera. Up until then, the camera was a big device and it had to be on a tripod. But now the small portable camera was invented, the Leica, 35 millimeter film, small film. You could hold it in your hand. You could move around with it. You could look up. You could look down. You could do all kinds of unexpected framing or and angles. The contrast of form and light, was more prominent. Again, this idea of the high and the low angles, and it led to a real sense of abstraction, and which is what really characterizes the New Vision. And interestingly, in this photograph by Rodchenko, a Russian photographer, you see really all of these qualities, I think, exhibited in this one photograph. Now, but the photograph we're going to talk about is by Charles Sheeler. And just as an aside note, I wanted to mention that Sheeler was a painter as well as a photographer. And here is one of his paintings. And you can see from this that it almost looks like a photograph. The lines are very sharp. The angles are very, very definite. He painted in a style which is called precisionism, because you can see how precise it is. But this is the piece we want to talk about. You saw it in the promotion for our talk today. Charles Sheeler, conveyors at the Ford Motor Company plant. And as we talk about it, bear in mind these qualities of the New Vision. And interested in your thoughts about how this photograph fits or doesn't fit into the New Vision.
Yeah, it's kind of a fascinating image. It almost looks like something you would see in a dream, and it just makes me wonder. Well, what are they making here at this factory? Why is it that these conveyor belts go in these different directions? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then all the angles, these diagonals are really
Right.
really cool. And but then you have the up and down of the smokestacks.
Right. So you see this idea of the selective framing to create this abstract notion of the crisscross and the smokestacks behind. In other words, the way he's placed his camera, the framing and just how he's chosen to do that. But he makes for a very exciting picture.
Sarah says
My
X marks the spot. She likes the X that it forms. Has X appeal, we might say.
X appeal. Okay.
And I'm now thinking more function, but these conveyor belts were at such steep angles. Something that Ford used to make cars would roll down these closed chutes. I don't know. I have no idea. It may have been where they were manufacturing the steel. I really don't know, what it was, but it is all this manufactured goods in layers. The from the
Yeah,
pipes to the
yeah.
water tower to the conveyor belts and the scaffolding or rigging over here on the left.
Yeah, it gives you the sense of the industrial age, doesn't it?
Truly.
And that was also what prompted the new vision. It was a part of this whole idea of the industrial age, moving into the modern world of the 1920s, 1930s, when it comes about. So it is that the whole evolution of society being and American life being reflected in the style of photography, the new vision.
And the machines being so much bigger than us. That's what the
Yes.
industrial age says to me.
Exactly. Part of the so-called machine age, as it was called. Yeah, where the machines kind of took over. And we should do a session just on new vision at some point, because it's my favorite period of photography, because I just think it's so, the photographs are so exciting. And
Well, we would love that, Rob.
Yeah.
That's an emphatic yes from me.
Okay.
So
Well,
we got
we'll
some
move on.
comments in
Okay.
chat. Karen says she really likes the water towers. Kind of makes you think of the Beckers that we talked about a few months ago. Gail says, what can't Americans build? Anything is possible. So many angles, shades, expresses complexity from which Americans create possibilities. Anne says it was a place to make steel as well as autos. Sherry says, growing up in a suburb of Detroit, we had a field trip there in elementary school. This doesn't look at all familiar. So maybe things, you got to understand that, like, it's cropped in a certain way too. So that might change how you view
I
it.
also want to say it's a long time ago, but also I don't know that we spent any time looking at the outside. We probably looked inside just to the assembly line.
Yeah. And
Anne
again,
is
it's the
doing-
way a photographer sees something, which may not be the natural way you'd see it, but the photographer saw it that way and made something that was interesting and artistic.
Anne is noting the coal cars in the foreground, so that's telling us probably is the steel is being made there. Paco is speculating. Apparently, it became the nuclear facility. I don't know about that. And Gail says, anything you want to talk about, Rob, she's in, as well as I.
All right.
I really agree
Okay,
with you,
very
Gail.
good. Okay, well, maybe we'll do the new vision, because it's my favorite period, and if we do it, I'll tell you why.
2024.
Okay, let's
We'll
move
sign
on
you
for
up.
now. Okay, great. Okay, so
And
we're
Marcia
gonna
says
look at it. Sorry.
Marcia, one last comment. Marcia says the train comment caused me to see the barrels in the ultra foreground. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't notice. I didn't notice those barrels either.
Yeah.
The more the more you look at the details, the more interesting it becomes.
They're real car, real wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the overriding the overriding context is this whole idea of the machine age, the industrial age, and it really communicates that. Okay, well, let's go to a different age. Imogen Cunningham, we've looked at her work before. Wonderful photographer, worked for many, many years, did a whole variety of different types of work. Very well known for her botanicals. Here's a beautiful example of it. This architectural photograph of it's actually a Greek theater in Berkeley, I believe, or in Oakland someplace. But again, seen kind of as an abstraction. Her portrait work, Frida Kahlo, from a series of photographs she did when Frida and Diego Rivera were in San Francisco, and Diego was painting some of the murals. And this photograph on the right, I've always loved, still life. It's called The Unmade Bed, and just kind of a very odd, interesting photograph. But the photograph that I want to talk about is this one. It's Agave Design #1, and it's always been one of my favorite Cunninghams. I just think it's just an outstanding photograph. I want to read a little quote from John Sarkowski. He was the curator of photographs for many, many years at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And he said Cunningham was less interested in what the plant was than in what else it might become when photographed in the right light from the right vantage point. So that gives us something to think about it and to talk about. So again, this is also modernism. This is a style of modernism. So when you see this, what does it bring to mind? What's going on here?
And the first thing that comes to mind for me is like, it looks like almost like it could be missiles or rockets, something man-made. It doesn't look like nature. It looks like something a human being would create. Gail says,
what I would say is that yes, you're right, but the plant part of it does look like a plant to me. But then you have these other elements that are added, the shadow and however she's doing this, and I think it's just this wonderful combination. Go ahead.
Some other Gail says, wow, love it. And Terry says it looks like fingers with long nails. Yeah, I'd see that for sure.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I love it too. I just think it's wonderful abstraction and again, the photograph of a plant which isn't a plant.
And Marcia wants to know: is the plant in a pot?
Who knows?
You don't really know. We don't get to see all of it.
You don't know. Yeah, you don't know. She hasn't shown us that on purpose because I don't think it's not about so much about the plant. It's about the abstraction that she could create with the plant.
Well, but she created the background, right, in order to play up all these angles and such. And
yes, exactly, right.
And
however that was done, it looks like a card that has shadow on it or something. But
real interesting comment from Erica. She says, if you saw it in color in the middle of a field, it would look like agave. The art is in the fact that she made it not look like agave. Great comment.
Good comment. Yeah.
So she creates an abstraction from something that is real.
Yeah.
And Gail says, I recently finished a historical novel on Dorothea Lange. Lots of talk about Imogen, who took to photographing plants when she was stuck at home caring for her kids, I think it was.
That's right.
Brings to mind the saying, a door closes, but a window opens.
Yes. That's very correct. That's very accurate. Yeah, we've talked about that before, that how she got into photographing plants because she was staying home raising her kids and wanted to be a photographer, and so she went into her garden and started wanted to continue being a photographer. She already was one.
Has wonderful photographs of Ruth Asawa taking care of her children as she was doing her art.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Great comments. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to move on to another wonderful artist, Edward Weston. And Edward Weston is considered by many to be the greatest photographer of the 20th century. And you look at these pictures, you might say, well, why is that? I mean, what's so great about these? Well, I didn't quite get that either when I first, started seeing his work, and everybody was so excited about Weston's work. And the thing is that what I learned is that, it was because he was so ahead of his time. He was doing work that no one else was doing at the time. It was very fresh and really revolutionary. I mean, who else was photographing a toilet bowl in Mexico for its abstract qualities, or the pepper that he and his family would later make for dinner and eat for dinner, or the shell? Again, he's interested in abstractions. So I want to show you this one, which is one of his many landscapes, if you will, and Dunes Oceano. And again, I think just a beautiful photograph. It's and as you talk about it, I'm interested in your thoughts about it. Again, as an abstraction, not as a picture of sand, but as an abstraction. What do you get from it?
Well, we were talking earlier about the idea that photography is the pencil of nature. And here we've captured like nature has created these patterns. This is that's what we see in the sand is something that's a result of the wind. And it just shows you kind of like the wondrous impact that nature has on our world. So that's kind of where I go with this, that, it is an abstraction. It's got these wonderful lines, but to me, it's just like so cool that this would result from something just out there in our natural world.
I think it's a good example of how, when the photographer selects the frame, it's because of the way he framed it that gives it those qualities that you're talking about, Rodney. If it was framed a different way, cropped a different way, it would be a very different picture.
We have a question from Gail. Was this a number of different dune photos melded together, or dunes from one location with wind creating the different patterns in one place?
Yeah, no, one place, definitely one place.
It's one place, but it has these lines that kind of separate it.
Yeah, that's what I think is such a wonderful picture. Yeah, it's incredible.
Erica says he was able to juxtapose the patterns on the sand with shadows of the sand dunes. And Marcia says, it's as though animals were running and got captured fossil-like in the sand cement. Oh yeah, I see the animals now.
Yeah, down in there, yeah. Uh-huh.
Gail says, wow, mind-blowing.
Yeah. But it's the magic of Weston. I mean, he's an amazing photographer, and he worked always with a large format camera, an 8x10 negative, large format, and no fancy manipulation except for the printing. In the printing, where he had a lot of control over the light and dark and so on. And you get a sense of why Edward Weston is so respected and considered to be such a master. And again, no one was doing this at the time, not to this degree. So, anything else there, Rodney?
No, but where is Oceano?
It's in Monterey. It's near where he lived. He lived in Carmel. Yeah, it's down in that neck of the woods. All right. Well, let's move on. Again, let's jump back a ways and look at the work of Eugene Etche. Some of you may be familiar with him. He's a bit less well known. While many photographers have been, concerned with documenting, and we've talked about what Evans and so on, documenting something, or expressing an aesthetic sensibility in a subject. Etche was able to combine both. He was documenting, but he did it with a wonderful sense of the aesthetic. And his greatest body of work was documenting old Paris as it was being torn down. Around the turn of the century, last century, late 19th, early 20th century, George Eugene Haussmann was a French architect, and he was given the task of redesigning Paris. And Paris, up until then, had been a series of villages, and as they were being torn down to build the urban design that we have in Paris today, the large boulevards and so on, Etche was documenting these villages, these buildings before they were gone. Now, an American photographer named Bernice Abbott, and you may know some of her work, lived in Paris as a young woman and actually worked for Man Ray, the famous photographer, and through Man Ray met Etche. And when she saw his work, she knew there was something special there, and she knew that what he was doing was important. And so when he died, Etche, she put together some money and she purchased his estate, the photographs and the negatives. And for many years, she promoted the work and showed the work through different dealers and galleries and so on. And eventually, the body of work, his estate, was acquired by the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And so today, Etche is recognized as one of the most important forerunners of the of modern photographic art. So this is the photograph that I'd like us to look at and talk about. It's old Paris. And when you see this, what does it conjure up for you? What does it bring up for you?
Well, it's an urban scene, but you don't really, you see maybe one person, but they're kind of blurry. A couple people, I guess you can see a few people, but it's not very crowded. And then of course we've got the horse-drawn carriage. So it's telling us, yep, this is from pre-automobile Paris. I get a sense that the street is maybe not paved. It might be a dirt street. It might.
Yeah.
And then kind of the curve is kind of pleasing to it.
Very pleasing. It's a wonderful example of the this idea that he was documenting, but doing so in a very aesthetic way, where he places his camera to see the curve, the height, all of the framing. It's all very intentional. And so not only is it a wonderful document, but it's very pleasing as a photograph.
Also, I like that lamppost.
Yes,
kind
I
of
love
old
that.
style
Yeah.
Parisian lamppost, and
Yeah.
just kind of a glimpse of a past, of a place that's no longer there.
With all the
Right.
windows,
Go ahead.
I was saying with all the windows, you expect a lot of people, or maybe that's my connection with a downtown today. So to me, there's this disconnect between how many people these tall windowed buildings can hold and how many we're seeing on the street,
So I imagine it was taken early in the morning. That's just my sense, right?
It has that feeling of being early in the morning. Yeah.
A few more comments in chat. Athena says the mansard roof is fabulous. Yeah, it really is. We don't see that so much anymore. The column is strange. Yeah, that's true. There's this big kind of column for, I don't know, must be commemorating
whatever
something.
that is. Yeah, something. We
There
don't
he
know.
says, the buildings on both sides, as well as the street, are curved. It is elegant. Ron says tops of the building disappear into the fog. And Sherry says, it seems to me that it was probably very early in the morning. Yeah, I'm guessing there's like a lot of people are hungover. We know Paris.
Yeah.
Nightlife. And so, yeah, you'd probably want to be talking in a very soft voice if you were out on the street.
Yes.
And Anne's noting almost no shadows. So again, I guess that's
yeah. Well, again, it's part of his aesthetic, and just beautiful. Really conjures up such emotion. I think about the only place I think left in Paris with this feeling is the Marais, and to some degree it was spared, but most of. You can imagine the whole city being that way. I went to a lecture one time by someone who's doing their PhD on ETJ, and I asked her afterwards. I said, there are many photographers who photograph Paris. What is so magical? Why is ETJ considered to be the best? And what she said I thought was very interesting. She said, because he shows us so much. Well, I have one more photograph to, and this is a bonus photograph since we do have 5 more minutes, and we haven't seen any photographs by unknown photographers. So here is one. It is called the Funhouse, and what is going on here?
Doesn't look fun.
It doesn't look fun. That is the funny thing about the Funhouse.
It's a traveling circus. And this is a traveling circus, and they're packing up, or maybe that's just one of the attractions to go into the scary place.
I have to say, I love the bodice that woman is wearing. She's pretty provocatively dressed. And there's that guy. The guy down below looks like what's his name, Marty Feldman from It does remind me of Young Frankenstein, which is just such a fabulous movie. Um, so I don't know. It's like,
And
I guess the question I would ask is, would you want to be in this scene? You know, what do you think?
I don't know, but and this I don't know if this is a real person or part of the exhibit. This is obviously a mural on the wall. This looks like a real thing in front of it, and then this guy sitting here. We don't know quite why he's sitting there, and I don't know if this is a figure in the fun house or what. This looks more real than the rest to me. But I just
Comment from Paco. I really like how they mutually act with each other. You know, so these figures are all interacting with each other, the real ones and the painted ones.
good comment. Yes, good comment. Good observation.
And then so someone else was going to jump in.
I think I was going to say that, well, first of all, there's torture taking place throughout the left, but our guy at Repose, our Marty Feldman, he's in a t-shirt and it's nighttime. So I don't think you would rest against this house of horrors, but you might be responsible for setting it up. So he's a carny or a roadie.
Yeah,
But the figure,
yeah, they're torturing people. What, you know, but I just work here, right?
but the guy next to Marty Feldman, I think he's wearing modern day jeans. Does anybody else get that?
Yeah, it looks like it. That's what makes me wonder if he's real or not, or if he's maybe a mannequin or something as part of the fun house. I don't know. Yeah.
So Sherry
it doesn't look too fun to me either.
Sherry thinks that the guy sitting is the ticket taker. So Marty Feldman making some money for the carny. Karen says she's scared. This is a very good October image, I think. Ron says the guy in front may be a carnival worker. His blasé expression is in contrast with the sensationalism of the mural.
Yeah.
And Sherry says he could be an actor, the guy on the right. Yeah. Oh, the guy on the far right could be an actor. Yeah, it's just like an intriguing
could be.
image.
Yeah, costume figure. I mean, either, yeah.
Yeah, I loved it because this is actually from my own collection. I love this picture because it is the combination of the real people and the painted people, and you have to ask yourself, you know, why is this the fun house? You know, what is it? People getting tortured in the fun house? What is this about? You know, so.
Oh, Karen says he is rolling a cigarette.
Right. So he's at rest. Wow.
And then the question, of course, would be what kind of cigarette?
Yeah, that he is. Yeah, you can see it right there.
And so, Rob, this is not a famous photograph. This is something you kind of plucked from obscurity. Is that true?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I saw this in LA at a photo show one time, and I just loved it. You know, and it's an unknown photographer. You know, we make a distinction between unknown photographer and anonymous. You know, like a snapshot may be anonymous, but I always, if there's some intent behind it, such as you see here, it's not just a random snapshot. I call it photographer unknown, because there is a photographer here. We don't know who that photographer is, but that photographer is making some aesthetic choices, and it's not just a snapshot. So there's some intention here. And but anyway, yeah, I just thought it was a wonderful picture. So a very intriguing picture. So
last comment, or maybe a couple last comments. Sherry says, my late husband's favorite thing at Playland at the Beach was the fun house. And is it possible this could be Playland at the Beach, Rob? Since
it could be. I mean, I don't remember it as well as Sherry's husband Paul, who is also a good friend of mine, and I don't remember it, but it could be. I mean, it could be anywhere, or it could be a traveling show, as somebody said. You know, carnival.
Couple more comments. Gail says, I didn't like it, but looked some more and then decided the combo of the peeps in the painting on the left and the real peeps on the right walking into the show was interesting. And Marcia says, the sign on left ends in RS as in horrors. House of Horrors.
Over here.
So
Yes.
good segue. We're kind of at the end of our time, but it is October. We've got I think people have really outdone themselves this year. I'm just down the street. We're up at Tahoe, and one of our neighbors has a giant skeleton in their driveway. Maybe I should make some kind of photograph of that. I don't know. But Rob, thanks again for, these things are always great. We have a whole bunch of shows we've done with you, and maybe I need to put them all together. And, I think people who love photography always really enjoy these things. These are some of our best attended shows. So Rob, thank you so much for coming back to Art Viewing Adventures.
Thanks so
All right,
much, Rodney,
always
Nick, and Robert.
Always a pleasure. I always love being with you all. So yeah.